Welcome to ASAP's Time Management Workshop. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to identify exactly where your time is spent, how much time you have to spend on activities, and where your free time is so you can optimize it. Let's dive right in. There are 3 interactive worksheets, each of them building on each other, so you'll need to complete them all and use them later for reference. You can find these worksheets in the notes of this video. Pause and either print them or use a few sheets of paper to mock up these handouts. Worksheet 1, entitled Categorizing Your Time, should take you no more than 30 seconds. Here we divide our time in 2 compartments, non-negotiable events and negotiable events. In our first column, non-negotiables, I want you to list all the events in your life that have a firmly established time, meaning you can't control when it happens and you need to be there. In the second column, our negotiable events, I want you to write all the activities you do that are flexible in nature. This can include optional activities, in addition to necessary items you do regularly, like eating. You have to eat, but you control the time in which it happens. Same with studying. You will want to list it as a negotiable because you negotiate when it happens in your schedule. Pause, fill it out, and press play when you're ready. Did you find that one list was longer than the other? Typically, students find that the non-negotiable list is pretty small, and students are in a lot more control of their time than they believe they had initially. I'd like to quickly share this time matrix I came across while reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Here, the author Stephen Covey categorizes time into 4 quadrants. Let's look at Quadrant 1, Important, Urgent. These are pressing items with deadlines. Perhaps you have an exam tomorrow and you realize you don't understand a key concept. You would want to get right on that. Quadrant 2, Important and not urgent, is you have an exam, but let's say you have 2 weeks to prepare. So you have more than enough time. This is the items with prevention, the planning, the relationship building. Yes, that's important too. Personal and professional development. A good example of Quadrant 3, not important and urgent, is let's say there's a movie you really wanted to go see, and today's the last day it's playing in the theater. These are the popular activities and the fun interruptions. And finally, Quadrant 4, the not important and unurgent stuff. This is the Facebook browsing. The author also mentions that the more time you spend in box 2, the less time you'll spend in box 1. And box 1 can be pretty stressful. So if you had to choose a box, which box would you choose? Let's briefly discuss goals. I would like for you to think about what's important to you. To simplify it, think about just one long-term goal and one semester goal that can help aid the long-term vision. Pause this video if you need an extra moment or 2. Do you have something in mind? Perhaps the long-term goal is to get into medical school, and a semester goal is to get straight A's. Sounds awesome. Now think about the activities you've done in the last 48 to 72 hours. Are your actions aligned with that goal? Ultimately, this is why we want to get a handle on our time, right? It's okay if you don't have it all figured out. You're still learning and growing. But as college students, I encourage you to mark out some time to focus and develop those personal goals. Now let's move on to Worksheet 2, called Time Evaluation. I will want you to spend a bit more time on this worksheet, giving your best guesstimates on the numbers of hours per week you spend on each of these activities. Look at the left-hand side of the worksheet. Drafted is a list of regular daily tasks. Compare that list to your first worksheet. If you have personal activities we missed, be sure to add them in the empty rows. If you don't do an activity we listed, simply skip it. A great way of getting started is to look at one task at a time and think about a full day. Then think about whether you do the task daily or if the time commitment is the same, in which you would just multiply by 7 or maybe multiply by just a few days a week. Let's work together through this list. Do you have your sheet ready? I'll create an example and you come up with yours. Pause the video whenever you need more time. I'm going to start out of order and start with my own sleep schedule, for example. On average, I get about 8 hours a night. Sometimes it's 6.5 or 7, but what I aim is really 8 hours. If I multiply 8 by 7, I sleep for a total of 56 hours a week. Now, if I napped, I would look at the days a little bit differently. If yours is similar, you can write down the same number. Here's another regular activity, class time. The university rule of thumb is for each credit hour, the professor is expected to teach for 1 hour of class a week. English composition, for example, is 3 credit hours. Generally, you are in class either Monday, Wednesday, Friday for an hour, or Tuesday, Thursday for about an hour and a half. There's a little bit of variation with labs and whatnot, but for the sake of this activity, if you are in 15 credit hours, Write 15 hours next to class time. I work out about 3 times a week and have my soccer rec league 1 hour a week. So that's 4 hours. Here's another example. Socializing with friends. I do that at the same time that I do some of my other activities. So I'm going to leave it blank. Don't get caught up by dissecting whether you brush your teeth for 30 seconds or 2 minutes. These are just guesstimates. Complete your sample and I'll do the same. And let's join together when you're ready. So how did you do? What is your total number? There are 168 hours in a week. If your total is more than 168 hours, it's physically impossible. So go back and revise your estimates. Keep in mind that if it's an activity that was 30 minutes, you should add it as 0.5 to the hour. Pause the video to get the accurate number and we can move forward. So how much free time am I left with? Let's figure it out. There are 168 hours in a week. Subtract your total from 168 and what you're left with is your total free time. If days were divided up equally, you could then divide by 7. In my case, I would have a little over an hour to do absolutely nothing. After all, I listed all my activities including sleep, watching TV, and other leisure activities. On average, when I do these workshops in person, I see students with about 4 to 5 hours of free time each day. How many free hours are you left with? Since I'm not there, I want to walk you through a few of these activities, starting with study time. The university rule of thumb is a professor should assign 2 hours of homework for every 1 credit hour class. Have you ever wondered why 12 credit hours is the minimum to be a full-time student? We learned earlier that for each credit hour that you pay for, you're in class for about 1 hour. If you take the minimum credits for full-time and multiply that by 2, you're left with 24 hours of study time. If you then add the original 12, you're left with 36 hours to be immersed as a full-time student. What's a full-time employee anywhere? In the US, it's about 40. In countries like Spain, minimum full-time employees are at about 35 hours a week. If you did the math again for 15 credit hours, you would be reaching 45 hours a week to be the best student you could be. This is an adjustment for a lot of students who don't realize the time commitment of being an A student. You didn't think you'd get so much math in a time management workshop, huh? Let's get back to some of our other considerations. Work, exercise, and clubs. If you are reaching time limits that are uncomfortable for you, perhaps you should consider where there might be some wiggle room to give up an activity or two. Let's move on to our final worksheet. In worksheet 3, we look at a week's glance to really see where we have free pockets of time. Look at the sheet in front of you. Times are broken down into 30-minute increments. For the sake of this activity, round up or down to the 30-minute mark. For example, if the class ends at 8:50, fill the box until 9 a.m. You will be labeling boxes for each of your activities. I suggest grabbing some highlighters and color coding for a more comprehensive view. Remember how I said you'd refer back to your other sheets? Look at your first worksheet and start to plug in your non-negotiable items. It should look something like this. Now pause this video and do yours. Now that you've finished all your hard, non-negotiable items, let's move on to your negotiable tasks. I always ask students to plug in their study hours next. However, if there is one activity that is really compelling you at a certain time, then plug that in now. When you start plugging in your study time, try to put it in 2-hour increments, which is optimal. This is my sample with negotiables included. Pause this video and do yours, and then come back and see me. You may have noticed I added a box called Plan Schedule. There are 2 words in time management, time and manage. If you've ever been managed at work, you know that a good boss is one who checks in, revisits your needs, and creates deadlines. Adding time to plan your schedule is making you a manager of your time. A planner is not stagnant. Exams come and go, and you need to focus on some courses over others at different points in time. In those 30 minutes, you won't simply put study time, but actually map out what you will be studying during those study hours, ultimately creating more time with your material during your designated study. There are different types of planners. People generally like to organize by hour or by day, where they can simply write in their tasks. Our planners in ASAP are hourly because we want you to be mindful of your day. Additionally, we have a few focused areas to consider as you move through each day. You may call or visit ASAP to see if we have a planner for you. If you find a planner is bulky, you may want to consider an electronic one. I love my Google Calendar because I can quickly access it from my phone and my computer when I need to take longer notes. You don't have to get this technical, but since I use various calendars, I can hide or show as many as I want at a given time. I frequently rotate between day, week, and month view so I don't get caught by surprise. Regardless of what you use, I will encourage you to write in all your assignments at the very start of each semester. I want to leave you with a few added benefits as motivation to get you moving. First, managing your time can help you keep track and focus on what you want to achieve. Next, as I mentioned before, it can really reduce stress. And finally, one of the biggest surprises students realize once they have started managing their time is that they actually have more time. And who doesn't want that? As a final tip, the key to managing your time efficiently is to plan ahead and consistently refer back to your planner. Each time you do this, it will get easier and you may find more time for other activities. Thank you so much for your attention. Should you have more questions or want one-on-one support, feel free to call ASAP and we will be happy to help you.